Ladies and gentlemen, there is a truth about human behavior that often goes unnoticed, yet shapes every part of our lives. You are the product of what you repeatedly do, not your dreams, not your intentions, not your silent hopes, but your habits, the small actions you repeat when no one is watching. Think about it. Confidence is not built in one moment of courage. Discipline is not formed in a single decision. Excellence is not created by one great performance. They are the results of repeated choices, repeated behaviors, repeated patterns. Every day, each of us rehearses the person we eventually become. When you repeat complaining, you become negativity. When you repeat gratitude, you become optimism. When you repeat effort, you become growth. The fascinating part is this: your habits are created by you, but eventually you are created by your habits. So ask yourself, what did you repeat today? Did your actions match your goals, or just your moods? Did you move one step closer to who you want to be, or did you replay yesterday's version of yourself? Greatness is never a single leap. It is a series of small steps taken again and again, and failure is rarely one big mistake. It is a collection of repeated excuses. If you want to change your future, start by changing what you repeat daily. Repeat learning, repeat discipline, repeat kindness, repeat effort, repeat belief, because life is not shaped by what we occasionally do. It is shaped by what we consistently do. You became who you are by what you repeated, and you will become who you want to be by what you repeat next. Thank you. 5 keynotes of the speech habits define identity. You become the result of what you consistently do, not what you occasionally do. Repetition builds character. Courage, discipline, and excellence are created through repeated actions. Daily choices shape long-term outcomes. Small decisions add up to powerful long-term results. Change begins with behavior to change your future. Change what you repeat every day. Consistency is more powerful than motivation. Success comes from repeated effort, not temporary inspiration. Habits define identity in ways most people never fully recognize. We often think identity is something we are born with or something shaped only by major life events. But in reality, identity is sculpted quietly and consistently by the small actions we repeat every single day. What you do again and again becomes not only what you are good at, but also what you begin to believe about yourself. If you repeatedly show up late, you start to see yourself as someone who is always late. If you repeat moments of discipline, even in small forms like keeping your space clean or finishing your tasks on time, you begin to identify as a disciplined person. And once your mind accepts an identity, your behavior begins to match it automatically. This is why the link between repeated actions and identity is so powerful. Repetition trains not just your habits but your self-perception. People often underestimate the effect of small, repeated choices because each one alone seems insignificant. Skipping one study session, missing one workout, wasting 1 hour scrolling. None of these feel life-changing in the moment. But identity isn't formed in moments, it's formed in patterns. A single action is simply an event, but a repeated action becomes a habit, and a habit becomes a part of who you are. Over time, these patterns accumulate and create the internal narrative you carry. When you consistently practice kindness, you begin to believe you are a kind person. When you regularly avoid challenges, you slowly start to believe you are someone who just can't do hard things. Your brain builds identity based on evidence, and the evidence comes from your behavior. Another important aspect is that repetition makes behaviors easier, smoother, and more instinctive. The first time you try something, you rely on effort, but the 100th time you do it, you rely on identity. Think about anyone highly skilled, an athlete, a musician, a speaker, a leader. They didn't become that way because they had a dream of becoming excellent. They became that way because they repeated the necessary behaviors until those behaviors became a part of them. Excellence is never an accident, it is a repeated pattern. Identity forms the same way. If you repeatedly push yourself to complete your responsibilities even when you don't feel like it, you start to see yourself as reliable and strong. If you repeatedly quit when things get uncomfortable, you start to see yourself as someone who never finishes anything. Your identity becomes a mirror reflecting everything you do repeatedly, whether those actions help or harm you. The interesting part is that repeated actions don't have to be big to influence your identity. Small habits carry enormous power. Reading a few pages a day may not turn you into a genius overnight, but repeated daily reading shapes you into someone who values learning. Writing a few sentences daily may not make you an author by next month, but it builds the identity of a writer. Even the act of waking up and making your bed each morning sends a message to your brain. You are someone who starts your day with order and control. These small reinforcements slowly build a sense of who you are, and once identity forms, it becomes the foundation for your future decisions. You behave in alignment with the person you believe yourself to be. This is also why negative habits are so dangerous. When you repeatedly avoid responsibility, repeatedly react with anger, or repeatedly choose distraction over progress, you reinforce the identity of someone who lacks control or direction. You don't just form bad habits, you form a weaker identity. And when your identity weakens, motivation becomes harder, discipline becomes harder, and change becomes harder. You begin to feel stuck, not because you lack potential, but because your repeated actions have created a version of yourself that feels trapped by your own patterns. The good news is that identity is always fluid. The same way, repetition can build an identity you are unhappy with. Repetition can also build an identity you are proud of. Even the smallest positive action repeated consistently begins to shift how you see yourself. When you repeat the behavior of someone confident, you slowly start to feel confident. When you repeat the behavior of someone disciplined, you slowly start to live as someone disciplined. The actions come first, the identity comes after. You do not wait to feel like a better version of yourself. You repeat the actions that a better version of you would take. Over time, your identity catches up. In the end, you do not become who you say you are. You become who you repeatedly prove you are through your actions. Repetition builds character in ways that are often invisible at first, yet incredibly powerful over time. When people look at someone who is confident, courageous, or highly disciplined, they often assume those qualities were natural or effortless. But character is not something handed to you at birth. It is something you construct through practice. Every repeated action becomes a brick in the foundation of who you are becoming. Courage is formed through repeated moments of choosing to face fear, not through a single act of bravery. Discipline is formed through repeated decisions to follow through, not through one strong day of self-control. Excellence is formed through repeated commitment to improvement, not through one extraordinary performance. Character grows through the ongoing cycle of effort, struggle, correction, and consistency. The most interesting part is that repetition shapes character even when the actions are small. A person who consistently chooses honesty in small moments eventually becomes known for integrity. Someone who regularly checks on others develops the character of compassion. A student who repeatedly studies even when it feels boring becomes someone who is academically strong and mentally persistent. It is the repetition of these small behaviors that slowly redefines who you are and how you respond to the world. Most people underestimate these small actions because the results are not immediate. But character is not built instantly. It's built layer by layer through repeated decisions. Repetition also strengthens emotional resilience. When you face challenges again and again, even if they are uncomfortable, your mind adapts. You learn to stay calm in situations where you used to panic. You develop patience where you once had frustration. This happens not because you suddenly changed, but because you repeatedly practiced responding differently. Every time you resist reacting in anger, you strengthen your ability to manage your emotions. Every time you push yourself to complete a task even when you feel tired, you strengthen your ability to endure difficulty. These repeated actions create emotional habits, which eventually become a part of your character. And just as positive repetition builds strong character, negative repetition builds weak character. If you repeatedly avoid challenges, you slowly develop the habit of escaping instead of confronting. If you repeatedly judge others, you shape yourself into someone who sees life through criticism rather than understanding. If you repeatedly give up when you face difficulty, you train your character to surrender whenever things get tough. These habits, repeated over time, become the default behavior of your personality. People often don't notice when negative repetition is shaping their character because the change is gradual and silent. But repetition never stays neutral. It always moves you towards something or away from something. Another powerful element of repetition is that it builds credibility not just with others, but with yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you strengthen your self-trust. You begin to believe you can rely on yourself to do the hard things. But when you repeatedly break promises to yourself, even tiny ones, your inner confidence weakens. You start to doubt your abilities, not because you lack skill, but because your mind has learned through repetition that you do not follow through. Character is deeply connected to self-trust, and self-trust is shaped by repeated actions. Repetition also plays a major role in shaping your values. When you consistently choose to help someone, you reinforce the value of kindness. When you repeatedly prioritize your responsibilities, you reinforce the value of accountability. When you consistently push yourself to improve, you reinforce the value of growth. Over time, these repeated behaviors turn into your personal principles, those invisible rules that guide your daily choices. What you repeat reflects what you value, and what you value becomes a part of who you are. What's even more fascinating is how repetition influences your instincts. With enough repetition, certain behaviors become automatic. You no longer have to think hard to act with patience, honesty, or discipline, because repetition has wired those responses into your character. This is why people who train themselves consistently often seem naturally calm, confident, or focused. It isn't natural, it's practiced. The quality of your instincts is directly shaped by the actions you repeat the most. Ultimately, repetition is the silent architect of character. People often wait for motivation or inspiration to help them change, but it is repetition, not emotion, that shapes who you become. Every time you choose to act in alignment with the person you want to be, even if it feels small or insignificant, you reinforce that part of your character. Every repeated effort strengthens the qualities that define you. Through repetition, you don't just shape your habits, you shape the person you are becoming, one action at a time. Daily choices shape long-term outcomes in ways far more powerful than most people realize. Life rarely changes because of one big decision or one dramatic moment. It changes because of the small choices you make day after day, the choices that seem unimportant or too small to matter. These decisions look harmless in the moment, but they accumulate quietly over months and years, eventually shaping the direction of your life. Every day, you are planting seeds through your actions, and those seeds eventually grow into the results you experience. Whether you succeed or struggle, rise or remain stuck, it often comes down to the consistent daily behaviors that build the foundation of your future. The reality is that small choices carry a power that is invisible at first. Waking up on time, reading a little, practicing a skill for a few minutes, choosing healthier food, saving a tiny amount of money, or staying focused for even 20 minutes. Each of these choices seems too small to matter today, but repeated over a long period, they create massive transformation. The same is true for negative choices. Skipping practice one day, procrastinating on one task, avoiding responsibility for one moment, or wasting time for just a little while. These also seem too small to matter, but repeated regularly, they slowly build the habits that lead to long-term disappointment. It is the compounding effect of daily choices that shapes the direction of your life. People often overestimate what they can achieve in a single day, but underestimate what consistent effort over months or years can produce. A student may feel that one extra hour of study won't make a difference, but repeated daily, that hour transforms their understanding, their confidence, and their performance. A person trying to improve their health may believe one short walk isn't enough to matter, yet repeated daily. It strengthens the body, clears the mind, and builds a routine of discipline. A content creator might think posting one video won't change their life, but consistent posting over time builds skill, audience, and identity. Every small decision becomes a building block in the bigger structure of your future. What makes daily choices so influential is their ability to turn intention into reality. Many people have big dreams, big goals, and big desires, but they stay trapped in the world of intention because their daily actions do not match those ambitions. You cannot want success, but repeat the habits of someone who avoids effort. You cannot want growth, but repeat the habits of someone who stays comfortable. You cannot want confidence, but repeat the habits of someone who avoids challenges. Your daily choices must be aligned with the future you want. When your behavior and your goals are in conflict, your behavior always wins. Daily choices also create momentum, and momentum is one of the most powerful forces in personal growth. When you make one good choice, it becomes slightly easier to make the next one. If you study a little today, you're more likely to study again tomorrow. If you exercise today, you're more likely to repeat it. Positive choices build positive momentum, but negative choices build negative momentum as well. If you avoid a task once, avoiding it the next time becomes easier. If you give in to distraction today, it becomes more tempting tomorrow. Momentum can either pull you forward or hold you back depending on what you repeat. The long-term outcomes of your life are also shaped by how you react to small moments of difficulty. When things get uncomfortable, your daily choice is either to push through or to step back. That single decision, repeated over hundreds of moments, defines your resilience. People who succeed are not stronger or luckier. They simply make the repeated choice to show up even when it feels uncomfortable or boring. They understand that growth happens in small steps, not giant leaps. Your relationships are shaped in the same way. Daily choices to communicate, to listen, to show respect, and to express appreciation build strong bonds. But daily choices to ignore, criticize, or overlook small acts of kindness slowly weaken relationships. The long-term quality of relationships is a reflection of small daily behaviors repeated over time. Financial stability is also built this way. Saving a little money, avoiding impulsive purchases, planning expenses, and making thoughtful decisions. Each small act compounds over years and creates financial freedom. But small, careless choices repeated often lead to stress and instability. Every area of life is influenced by the same principle. The things you do every day shape the results you live with in the future. In the end, who you become is not determined by what you do occasionally. It is determined by what you do consistently. The long-term outcomes you experience are shaped by the choices you make today, tomorrow, and every day after that. Your future is not built in a moment of inspiration. It is built in the quiet repetition of daily decisions. Change begins with behavior because transformation is not something that happens in your mind first. It happens through the actions you choose to repeat. Many people wait for the right moment, the right mindset, or the right burst of motivation before they try to change their lives. But real change does not start with a feeling. It starts with a decision, followed by a behavior that reinforces that decision. Even if the action is small, it signals to your mind that a shift has begun. Change is created not by wishing for a new life, but by acting in ways that align with the life you want. People often misunderstand change because they think it depends on willpower alone. Willpower is useful, but it is temporary. Behavior, on the other hand, creates patterns. Once a pattern begins, it becomes easier to repeat. When you choose a productive behavior once, it might feel difficult. But the second time becomes slightly easier, and the third time becomes even more natural. Eventually, the behavior becomes a habit, and that habit becomes part of your identity. This is why behavior is the core of personal transformation. You do not become disciplined because you want to be disciplined. You become disciplined because you practice discipline repeatedly. Behavior also has the power to reshape how you think and how you see yourself. When you act differently, your brain begins to form new beliefs about who you are. If you start exercising daily, your mind eventually begins to believe that you are someone who takes care of your health. If you read every day, your mind begins to see you as someone who values learning and growth. Actions come first, identity follows, and mindset evolves afterward. This is the opposite of what many people assume. They wait for mindset first, not realizing that mindset is built through consistent behavior. Every meaningful change in life comes from shifting the behaviors you practice every day. If you want to become more confident, you must do the behaviors that confident people do. Speak up, take responsibility, practice courage in small moments, and push yourself outside your comfort zone. Confidence does not come from hoping, it comes from acting. If you want to become financially stable, you must act like someone who manages money well, saving a little, planning your expenses, avoiding unnecessary spending. Financial stability is not a personality trait, it is a behavioral pattern. The same applies to becoming healthier, calmer, more focused, more skilled, or more successful. Change is created by behaving as the person you want to become long before you actually feel like that person. One of the strongest principles of human psychology is that behavior shapes belief. If you behave like a responsible person long enough, you begin to believe you are responsible. If you behave like a person who finishes tasks, you stop seeing yourself as someone who quits easily. If you behave like someone who cares for others, compassion becomes natural. This shows that behaving differently is not pretending. It is training your mind to accept a new version of yourself. The mind learns by observing the actions you repeat, and eventually it aligns your identity with those actions. Behavior also helps overcome emotional barriers that hold people back. Many individuals want to change but feel overwhelmed by fear, self-doubt, or confusion. They wait for those emotions to disappear before taking action. But paradoxically, action is what reduces those emotions. When you behave bravely even while afraid, the fear loses its power. When you work on your goals even when unmotivated, discipline grows stronger. When you take steps toward improvement even when you feel discouraged, you build resilience. Emotions don't have to disappear before you act. They disappear because you act. This is the power of behavior-driven change. Every day offers a chance to practice the behaviors of the person you want to become. Even small actions can create massive internal shifts. Drinking more water, waking up on time, responding calmly in difficult moments, spending 5 minutes learning something new, doing a tiny workout, writing a short paragraph, or organizing a small corner of your room. All of these behaviors seem simple, yet each one is a vote for the future version of yourself. The more votes you cast, the stronger that identity becomes. Change is rarely about taking one dramatic step. Instead, it is about choosing the behaviors that match your goals and repeating them until they feel natural. You don't have to overhaul your entire life at once. You only need to act in alignment with your desired future, one behavior at a time. Over weeks, months, and years, these behaviors compound into transformation. Consistency is more powerful than motivation because motivation is emotional, unstable, and temporary, while consistency is deliberate, steady, and transformative. Motivation can inspire you, but it cannot sustain you. It can spark the beginning of a journey, but it cannot carry you through the long, difficult middle where progress feels slow and results are invisible. Consistency, however, remains steady through all those phases. It turns small actions into lifelong habits and transforms ordinary efforts into extraordinary outcomes. People often think success comes from being constantly inspired, but in reality, success comes from showing up consistently, even on the days you feel uninspired. The truth is, humans are naturally inconsistent emotional beings. Some days you wake up full of energy, some days you feel tired. Some days you feel confident, other days you feel unsure. If success depended on feeling motivated every day, almost no one would achieve anything meaningful. The people who reach great heights are not those who feel motivated all the time, but those who work even when they don't. They understand that motivation is a bonus, not a requirement. They don't wait for perfect emotions. They rely on consistent behavior. Consistency also builds momentum. which is one of the strongest forces in personal development. When you repeat a small action every day, it gains power over time. A person who practices 5 minutes of a skill daily will eventually surpass someone who practices only when they feel motivated. A person who writes a few paragraphs every day will produce far more than someone who only writes when inspiration hits. A person who exercises regularly, even lightly, becomes healthier than someone who does intense workouts rarely. Momentum builds quietly and steadily, and once it picks up, it becomes easier to continue. This is why consistency is far more reliable than motivation. Another reason consistency is so powerful is that it rewires your brain. When you repeat an action often enough, your brain begins to automate it. What once required effort becomes natural. What once felt challenging becomes simple. Consistency reduces the mental resistance that makes tasks feel hard. For example, if someone consistently practices waking up early, over time they no longer struggle with it because their body and mind adapt. The same applies to studying, exercising, meditating, organizing, reading, or any other positive habit. The more consistently you do something, the less energy your mind needs to continue doing it. Motivation cannot create this effect, only consistent repetition can. Consistency builds trust within yourself. Every time you stick to your routine, even in a small way, you strengthen your belief in your ability to follow through. You prove to yourself that you can be counted on. And when you trust yourself, your confidence grows. On the other hand, relying on motivation often leads to inconsistency. You may work hard one day and then stop for a week because you don't feel like it. This inconsistency weakens your self-trust and creates internal frustration. You begin to doubt your ability to change your life. But when you commit to consistency, even in small actions, you rebuild that trust and start to feel more in control of your future. Consistency also reveals progress that motivation often hides. Motivation makes you expect quick results. When results are slow, motivation fades, but consistency teaches you to value the process instead of the speed. When you commit to showing up daily, you begin to notice tiny improvements. Your writing becomes a little clearer, your mind becomes a little calmer, your skills become a little sharper, your body becomes a little stronger. These small improvements compound over time into noticeable progress. Consistency rewards patience. Motivation rewards excitement. One leads to long-term success. The other leads to short-lived enthusiasm. People who achieve meaningful goals understand that consistency survives obstacles while motivation collapses under them. When life becomes busy, stressful, or uncertain, motivation disappears quickly. But consistency allows you to keep moving forward even during difficult times. It doesn't demand perfection, it just requires effort. Even if you do something at 20% capacity, doing it consistently is far more impactful than doing it perfectly but rarely. Consistency allows room for bad days without losing the overall momentum of your journey. Another reason consistency is more powerful is that it multiplies your opportunities. When you show up every day, you naturally improve, and improvement attracts better chances, better connections, better skills, better decisions. Doors open for people who stay committed, not for people who wait to feel inspired. Every day you stay consistent, you are building a track record, a foundation, and a reputation with yourself and with the world. Motivation may start the journey, but consistency is what completes it. While motivation depends on emotions, consistency depends on choice. And choice, repeated daily, becomes a force that can transform any area of your life, no matter how small the steps may seem at first. In the end, the story of your life is written not by the moments of inspiration or fleeting motivation, but by the actions you repeat day after day. Every habit, every choice, every effort compounds quietly, shaping your character, your mindset, and ultimately your destiny. The person you are today is the sum of what you have consistently done, and the person you will become is determined by what you choose to repeat starting now. Embrace the power of repetition, align your daily actions with your highest goals, And remember that greatness is not achieved in a single leap. It is built through the small, deliberate, and consistent steps you take over and over again until they define who you are. Your future is not waiting for you. It is being created by what you do today.